You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
The 4x4 Podcast, episode 144.
You're listening to the 4x4 Podcast, the podcast all about four-wheeling, overlanding, off-road racing, and the outdoor lifestyle. We talk about news, tips and tricks, answer your questions, and interview big and little names in the off-roading world. So whether your rig is busted and you're in the shop wrenching on it, or you're on your way to the trail, join us and we'll keep you plugged in on topics to help you get away. Here are your hosts, Dan, Craig, and Rich.
What is up, guys? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well. Just got back from a long weekend of driving, a lot of highway driving, no trail time, unfortunately. But, you know, we got to talk about some of the what's in the garage, what all we've been up to later on. So before we get into this show, and we've got some really good stuff lined up, just want to let you know that this episode of the 4x4 Podcast is brought to you by LT Wright Knives. These heirloom quality pieces will outlast your adventure, so plan well, drive safely, and carry an LT Wright knife. To find out more, go online to LTWrightKnives.com. Okay, so you know what? I think this episode, we're just going to jump straight to the good stuff. And I've got an interview that I recorded a while back with Luke from Ironman 4x4 USA. We're going to do that interview, and then we'll come back and talk news and feedback and what all we've been up to lately. So, without any further ado, let's jump to the interview. Today on the podcast, I'm very excited to have Luke Schnacka from Ironman 4x4 America. How you doing tonight, Luke?
Hey, Dan. I am very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So before we get into talking about Ironman 4x4, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. So how did you kind of get into off-roading?
So, as you can tell from my accent, I'm from the deep south. I grew up in the countryside in the UK, middle of England, and just the nature of where I lived, our daily vehicles really were Land Rover Defender 90s and Defender 110s. It's literally what I grew up in from the age of kind of 8. We spent the time driving around the fields and causing chaos even before we were legally allowed to drive. Yeah. And so yeah, we had Defenders, like I say, and that really gave me the first flavor of off-roading, just larking about in the Defenders in the countryside, and that passion has really stuck with me throughout. I'm now obviously 36.
Yeah, it's funny because that's kind of how I got into off-roading as well. It was, just getting around on a farm. It wasn't off-roading. It was just going about a regular day, and it happened to be off-road. Turns out that's a lot of fun.
It sure is.
However, I didn't have the luxury of being in something as, exotic to the North America as a Defender. Nobody's too interested in a Ford Ranger.
Well, you see, it's always the case, isn't it? You want what you can't have.
Exactly. Well, and see, that first truck that I was driving was a diesel-powered Ford Ranger from way back in the early 80s. So that was, I don't know, maybe that was made of unobtainium back then, but it's hard to say.
True.
Yeah, so was there anything special about the Land Rovers that you grew up driving, or are they just run-of-the-mill standard Landies?
Yeah, there was nothing. They were all pretty much stock. We had a Defender 90 that had effectively what we'd call a pickup, I guess, in the US, and then we had one with a cab on the back. So we went through a few different versions of those. Oh, and also a Toyota Hilux as well. That was quite.
Another unobtainium one.
Yeah, true. That is true. So yeah, there was nothing particularly upgraded about them. They were all stock, but obviously all diesels as well. A kind of a gas, a petrol 4x4.
Yeah.
In the UK is not really achievable because of the cost of the gas prices, which are insane.
Yeah, so I know from listening to my friends over at the Center Steer podcast that a lot of the Land Rovers had the PTO and that you could use the transfer case to engage other types of accessories. I even saw he posted one recently that they had somehow transformed it into a water fountain of some kind. But
What?
yeah, that's just not something that you see on a lot of American vehicles.
No.
Even decades ago, that wasn't a common thing.
No.
It's more just tractor type things. But that I kind of think highlights the utilitarian approach that Land Rovers have. That a lot of vehicles just don't.
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. Obviously, since I've moved from the UK to the US, which I did in 2015, I've really embraced the culture over here, and obviously all the vehicles that we couldn't get in the UK. So things like the Jeep Wranglers and Rubicons, and obviously all the trucks that you guys have, or we now have, because obviously I live here.
Yeah.
So that's good fun. Yeah, it's amazing. And now obviously I drive a 5th gen 4Runner, which I'm in the process of kitting out.
Excellent. Yeah. So you didn't decide to bring in a Hilux across the border, or?
It's very tempting.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. Maybe. And also, we look, I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time on YouTube and watching people like Ronnie Dahl, for instance, and you see the Australians cruising around in their 79 series Land Cruisers.
Oh man,
and,
those are nice.
Yeah, everybody that you speak to here would love one of those. So maybe one day.
Yeah, between Ronnie Dahl and like the Patriot camper guys.
Yes.
Oh, and what's the other one? All for Adventure. That's another one of the great shows. I'm a huge fan of that one.
There are some really good ones. There's so many people doing that.
Yeah. Yep. So now, since you've been in America, how have you found off-roading to be different or the same than it was in the UK?
Well, I would say that in the US, obviously you've got the off-road parks. And there are a good amount of those, especially in Oregon, where I live. But then, just because of the scale of the country, the UK is literally the same size as Oregon. So you're up almost exactly.
Yeah.
So your opportunity to go on an epic adventure is just not possible. You've really got to cross over into Europe, and then. Obviously, you've got a larger landmass. So, coming over to the US and just the sheer size of the country opens up the opportunities to get out into the outdoors for, I guess, multi-day trips, and also just the nature of the landscape. Here, it's like the UK on steroids. The mountains are bigger, the rivers are bigger, the lakes are bigger, everything's bigger. So that just adds more excitement, I guess, to the trip, and again the environment. You can go from, and especially even within Oregon, you can
the
go
west
from
side of the state is completely different than the east side of the state.
Yeah, absolutely. High desert to ocean to heavy forest. Just that diversity again within the US, and even within each state is awesome. That really was one of the main reasons why I wanted to come to the US, just to experience all that.
Yeah, and it certainly is a place that you could not fully experience in, a week or even a month visit. You really have to kind of spend some time here. So since you've been here in 2015, have you kind of expanded out your adventures beyond the borders of Oregon?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying as much as I can.
Yeah.
I've been to quite a few states, both really all across the country. So obviously Oregon, Washington's easy, up into BC, Canada, then obviously going down the coast into California, Denver. So I guess Colorado, Utah. Where else have I been? A ton of places.
Yeah, all over the western United States.
Yeah, that's right. And I occasionally get over to the East Coast as well. But unfortunately, I've not had any trips over there in the vehicle yet.
Oh, well, whenever you do, you have to try and get to New Hampshire and Vermont.
Yes.
I think you'll find Vermont is very familiar.
really?
To the UK.
That makes sense. Yeah.
In terms of landscape and then the green laning type of concept, our friends with Vermont Overland, he's put together a great series of events, but also kind of opens that up to Vermont is a special place. They have their Class 4 roads is what they're called. But all of their roads are just ancient roads, and so they're still available to use, but they just have fallen out of repair, which is great for the off-roader because it's publicly available property that you can go off-roading and explore, and you can link your little route together between the different towns and really take in kind of the local flavor. And Vermont is very proud of stuff that's made in Vermont. Everything from Ben & Jerry's ice cream to the maple creamies that are available all over, and the Vermont teddy bears. My kids love those teddy bears. So,
mine too.
Whenever you get to the East Coast, that's the place to go. Apparently, North Carolina has also got some great stuff.
I can see that being good.
Anyways, let's jump back here and talk a little more about Ironman 4x4. So you are from the UK, now live in the United States, but Ironman 4x4 is still gaining popularity in the United States. You don't hear a lot about them, but from my travels in Australia, that is one of the dominant premier brands in the off-roading industry in Australia. So how is Ironman kind of coming to the United States?
Well, you're absolutely correct. Ironman in the US has really been flying under the radar, and gone through a few changes over the years. But obviously, it is in the marketplace, and predominantly catering really to the Toyota audience, with the Land Cruisers and obviously the Prado platform. But Ironman, obviously 4x4 is an Australian brand, and as you say, it's one of the largest off-road brands in Australia and actually in the world. And it was established in 1958, so it's just turned 60 actually. So
holy cow!
It's been around for a while. And really the dominant markets are obviously Australia, which is huge, and then you've got South Africa, Dubai. China's a market that's emerging, obviously quite significantly right now. South America, Ironman is one of the larger brands, if not the largest brand as well. So really, now working with Ironman 4x4 HQ, we're looking to obviously put some gas on the fire and really start to grow the brand here and expose the products to obviously the marketplace and grow that product offering as well. Obviously there's the current catalogue that Ironman Australia have, which is really robust. But then there are the domestic vehicles here that they don't necessarily cater to. And again, that's something that we're looking to address over this next 12 to 18 months.
That's awesome. So, I'm looking at the Ironman 4x4 America website, and that's just ironman4x4america.com, and just kind of looking through some of the offerings that you guys have there. And when I go into the suspension category, you have suspension parts for vehicles that, for one, are not in America, but for two, I had never even thought about putting a suspension lift on a Hyundai or... And, I have seen some lifted Subarus, but, man, there's a bunch of Mitsubishi models in there, and this is phenomenal. A lot of people who may have these cars or vehicles in their driveway and never thought about the potential that they could turn them into the soft roaders at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, the global catalog for Ironman is significant, and they work direct with a lot of the vehicle manufacturers out of the gates to create those products, and suspension is really the backbone of the Ironman 4x4 brand. That's how they started, all those years ago. So that's the kind of the core product offering. But then outside of that, there's the bar work, so the obviously the bull bars, and then there's the monster winches, which we do £9,500 and a £12,000. And then we've got all the accessories that you would think of as well for overlanding or off-roading. So,
oh yeah, all the accessories that you'd think of, and then some that you haven't thought of yet.
That is true. Yes,
there's so much in there.
There's some interesting things in there. So the product offering is huge. And really what it all boils down to is that this product has been designed and developed in Australia. Obviously, we know that that's a great proving ground for this type of product. It's got to be super robust for the environment that they're in and the trips that they're doing. But at the same time, you get incredible value. That's been one of their key pillars from day one, is offering great performance product at a very, very competitive price. That's really the backbone of what they bring to market.
Yeah, and I think one of the other unique things about the suspensions that are made in Australia are that there's the engineering standard that those suspension parts are held to is way more stringent than they are here in the United States. The way they have to have an engineer that signs off on, like an actual safety engineer that goes and signs off.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that typically happens, I don't think, with the lift kits and suspension parts here in the United States.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct there. Stereotypically, there are always more stringent standards in Australia, New Zealand, and in the EU as well. I don't, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but that seems to be the case across many different markets.
Yeah, well, American culture, we're just going to do whatever we want and forget about the consequences. That's just our American style.
Whatever works.
Yeah, but it's really cool. And when we go back to talk about the camping accessories and all the other accessories, so one of the things that has caught my eye, I actually have, is the headlamp. It's an LED sensor headlamp where you can turn the light on and off and everything just by like waving your hand in front of the light. And like those are things that I never would have thought of, but turning on a headlamp when your hands are covered in grease, turns out it's pretty easy if you can just wave your hand up there and not smudge it all over the place. Yeah,
that's true. The design and development team that are in place, they do it. The doers, they take part in all this, in these expeditions. They use the product, so those little features that you can't necessarily think of in an office, they come out when you're in the wild.
Yep, that's something where necessity has driven the invention of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. So now we talked a little bit about the products. One of the things that I noticed while I was in Australia as well is that the store presentation of all of the products is just unmatched by anything that I have seen. I mean, I guess I don't get to go to a lot of off-roading stores, unfortunately, but I have yet to find one that has the same sort of presence and product presentation. Is that something that we're going to find here in an Ironman store in America anytime soon?
Maybe in time. I think the US. I think the US consumer is a little different. You guys are so used to choice, and not necessarily hooked in. I can only think of maybe one brand where people really get hooked into, and that's something like Apple. You get into that ecosystem with your MacBook and then your phone and your Apple TV. But outside of that, it's really hard to think of any other brand that's been able to do that in the US and actually in many other countries. Yeah. However, so in Australia, that's not necessarily the case. People like to, they really absorb the brand and if you're into Ironman or whoever it may be, you're really into it and you kind of kit yourself out from top to toe. Yeah. And also they have fitting, like Ironman fitting centers. So you go to the fitting center and you get your list of products for whatever you're intending to do, and then they fit it all there. They sign it off, and it's almost like your Toyota dealership, but it's an Ironman store.
Yeah, that's one of the things when I was talking to some of my Australian military counterparts, it doesn't seem too uncommon for somebody to take their new vehicle straight from the dealership over to a store like Ironman and just hand them a little pile of money, and they get their lift kit, their bull bars, their roof racks, and lights and fridges, and it's all just taken care of for them. And then they get to have the vehicle they wanted all ready to head into go hit the beach or the outback or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I can definitely see more and more of that happening here. But in terms of the holistic branded store, I think that's kind of, I don't know. Maybe something to test. Yeah.
That'd be cool. I know it's always kind of, I like being able to go in and see and touch and get a feel for everything. Especially if you're going to be spending a lot of money. Like, when somebody's going to plunk down their money for a refrigerator for their vehicle, they want to see kind of how it works. And that's still not something that a lot of people have.
That's true.
Go find their buddy that's got a fridge and see how they like it.
Yeah, exactly. That is true.
Very cool. Man. And so I haven't seen a lot about the winches here in the United States either. The monster winch. How does that kind of different than a lot of the other winches that are being offered out here?
Well, it depends who you're going to... There's so many winches in the market. You can go to Harbor Freight and get a winch.
Yeah, that's a great way to burn your vehicle to the ground.
Yeah, you can go to Harbor Freight and buy a winch. And equally you can get a top of the range worn winch.
Yeah.
And I would say that in terms of a direct comparison, the Ironman product is more akin to a better worn winch than something like a Harbor Freight product. So mechanically, again, these are built to a high specification, waterproof, got the breathers attached to them as well. And we really major on synthetic because that's what we see the majority of people are buying nowadays. So again, it's about, from a winch, actually it doesn't matter what category, but from a winch perspective, we're trying to give the customer a comparable product to one of the best in the market, but at a more affordable price.
Very cool. Well, Luke, I really hope that everybody goes to the website, Ironman4x4America.com, and then on the social media. But from what I'm told, I think there's going to be some new updates kind of coming soon.
Yeah, that's right. So we're just in the process of, upgrading everything. So we've got a new website coming imminently. Social media channels are going to get sorted out and brought to life. And we're really going to start, obviously, communicating the product and the brand to the audience. And obviously, we want that communication with the market, because we learn from our customers and that into development of new products. So the more that we can engage and communicate and collaborate, the better for all of us.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a ton of updates coming from how we communicate, but then equally, obviously, like I said before, we're expanding the product catalog, and then most importantly is we're in the process of backing all that up with inventory, so that if you want a product, you're going to be able to buy it and get it shipped to wherever you want it in a very short space of time.
That's awesome. Well, I know you are on the road right now, which kind of indicates you're going to some different events. If somebody wants to meet up with you or see the Ironman brand in person, where should they go to kind of stay in touch and see you?
So we're obviously based up in Portland, Oregon right now, but we've got a network of dealers across the country, and that dealer list will be featured on our website. Outside of that, obviously, get in contact with us via our email address, via social media, and then also we'll be going to a ton of the shows this year. And one of the major ones is Overland Expo West, obviously coming up in May. So we'd love to get people to come by. We're going to have a bunch of freebies and goodies and competitions and beer and music, and obviously more importantly, all the products on display for people to test and preview. So I think Overland Expo West is going to be one of our key opportunities to connect with the listeners.
Yeah, well, from everything I've heard, that event has grown and grown and grown.
Yeah,
despite the strange weather that sometimes happens there.
That is true. You might be able to validate this, but I heard that the show had just been sold.
Yeah, the company that was putting it together has been bought out by another event company. So I don't know how that's going to shake out. I did see the announcement on the business side of things recently. So they certainly cannot make the sunshine or the snow, but hopefully the show goes on.
I'm sure it will. Like you say, the attendance has been growing. It's getting more and more popular.
Yeah.
And it's great to, again, it's just because you get to communicate, it's just great to get together and share our experiences and learn and talk and meet new people. I just think that's always going to be popular.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to go to either of the expos, either the East or the West, but I did get a chance to go to the Northwest Overland Rally, and the rallies definitely have a different flair than the expos, where the expos is more companies kind of showing off what they've got, whereas the expo or the rallies are more classes and then actually getting out and doing some off-roading with the overland and off-roading community.
Yeah, so, big fan of that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hopefully sometime we can link up, whether it be on the trail or at the expo or a rally or whatever, because I'm looking forward to any way that we can partner together with Ironman 4x4 and show off some of the cool stuff that you are doing for the off-roading community.
I completely agree. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, Luke. Well, thanks again, and we will be in touch again sometime very soon.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, Luke, thanks for joining me here and talking about everything Ironman 4x4. I just want to encourage everybody to go check out their website as they're getting stuff going there here in the United States, because like we mentioned in the interview, that's not something that the U.S. market is real familiar with, but all of our Australian listeners and the guys down in New Zealand, they are very familiar with Ironman 4x4. Okay, so from the wilds of Alaska to the searing heat of the outback in Australia, what will you find in the back of a discerning overland vehicle? An LT Wright Knife Overland Machete, of course. These are handmade from 1075 high carbon steel and your choice of either black or natural micarta. Need something that will stand out in the woods? Opt for the orange G10. It won't blend in with your surroundings wherever you wander. LT Wright Knives is a small company with a family feel. Located in Wintersville, Ohio, they have a passion for what they do. Everything from everyday carry to bushcrafting to the aforementioned overland-specific piece. LT Wright Knives has you covered. Each knife is thoughtfully designed, built, and tested before it heads out the door. Although they look good enough for the display cabinet, these knives like to work. Put the knife through its paces and know that it's backed by a lifetime guarantee. So carve, slice, chop to your little heart's content. LT Wright Knives for bushcraft, everyday carry, hunting, cooking, and overlanding, so you've got a lot of options. Carry your preferred LT Wright Knives model with pride. You're helping to support an American company that will stand behind their product with a lifetime guarantee and the satisfaction of a job well done. These heirloom quality pieces will outlast your adventure, so plan well, drive safely, and carry an LT Wright knife. Find out more online at ltwrightknives.com. All right, so in the news we have just a single article this time, and it is the Jeep Gladiator pricing has been, I guess it's been officially announced. There's been some, I don't know if we call it funny business, but Jeep has invited a bunch of media types to come and drive the Gladiator, but they're all under an embargo, so nobody can talk about what it actually drives like, but I suspect there's not going to be too many surprises in that front. But the pricing was the big surprise. So, Rich, what do you think about the pricing here?
I don't really think it's really that much of a surprise. It's right about where I thought it was going to be. Now, you got several different lineups, right? You've got the base model, the Sport, and the Sport S, which I think is going to start right around $38. Starting price for that. That sounds about right. The Overland is about 41, 42, and then the Rubicon's going to start around 45. The one thing about it though is it's not going to be hard to option out a Jeep well past $50,000.
Oh yeah, especially with Jeep offering so many of its own like in-house aftermarket type things, the lift, the extra bumpers, and all of that. And now that it's a truck, there's even more truck bed type accessories that they can add to everything that was previously made for the JL.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it surprised me. I really thought that it was going to be starting higher up in the price, starting at the $45,000 mark.
For the base? For the sport?
Yeah, for the sport. I thought it was going to be up above what the JL Rubicon was going to be. But turns out, I'm glad to be wrong when it comes into a lower price.
Yeah, and with this price, they're going to sell a ton of them, I think.
Oh, yeah. So, and it was interesting. I've started getting some messages on Instagram from some folks who thought that it wasn't going to sell very well because that's priced out above the Tacoma. It's above the Ranger, like we've talked about. I think the only one in the mid-size truck segment that comes close to that is probably the Colorado with the diesel engine, and I'd have to go back and look and actually do a good comparison. But I think even like the base Colorados are coming in well under this. So in the mid-size truck family, the Jeep Gladiator is standing on top of the heap.
Well, you're right. I think the Rubicon is definitely going to be priced higher than what's a TRD Pro go for? A Tacoma TRD Pro. I mean, they may know off the top of their head.
Yeah, it's up there.
All right. So, yeah, if you think about that, the Rubicon, I feel like you're getting more with a Rubicon than you are a TRD Pro.
Yeah, because you're going to have the opportunity for doors. Everything that's already out there for the LJ is going to fit right on this thing. It's a
not only that,
convertible.
You're getting front and rear lockers. You're getting, a solid front axle. You're getting the disconnecting front sway bars. You're getting a lot more with the Rubicon than you are with the TRD Pro.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I
saw a TR Pro in Gilroy the other day, and it was already lifted, and they were asking $56, I think, for it. It was already lifted, all ready to go.
Yeah, so it's funny. So as you were talking about it, I went to Toyota's website, and when you look at compare, I hit the compare button to compare other models of Toyota, but they're pretty smart. They know what I'm actually trying to do is cross-shop all of them, and so they'll give you the lineup. You've got the Toyota Tacoma versus the Chevy Colorado versus the Nissan Frontier. I noticed this list is missing the Ranger and the Gladiator, so I'm sure there's an update to Toyota's website coming soon. Yeah. But they're also comparing. Maybe I need to go in here and change what they're doing because they're looking at the access cab, the Tacoma SR, and nobody but the Orkin man is buying that thing. Let's see, but I'm glad to see that they're doing that, and I'm pleased with the pricing. So I don't know that I'm ready to go actually plunk down my order just yet, but maybe
I'll wait a few model years.
Yeah, and it's funny. So my dad is pretty set on that one. So hopefully I'll be able to drive one sometime soon. I'd like to think that he'll get one of the first ones rolling off showroom floor, but probably not. So
now, see, I'm a little confused. They're promoting for the Gladiator a V6 diesel. Am I reading that wrong?
No, so for the 2020 model year, there is, and it's going to be the same EcoDiesel that's in my Ram truck, probably with a different engine tune because it's going to have a different, transmission shift points and trying to get something else done. So I suspect, and I would also not be surprised if by the 2020 year that EcoDiesel got a moderate update because now the Chevy, I think their Mini Duramax is now the most powerful mid-size truck. I think theirs came in with like 270 horsepower and upper 400 torques.
Okay, this is why I'm confused because the 2019 or 2018, 2019 Jeep the new only has a 4-cylinder turbo diesel. So I'm confused on the engine.
Yeah,
that's it. I mean, why would they make 2 different diesel engines?
They won't.
And
I don't think that one's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be 2 different diesel engine options. That's just not going to be a thing.
Then why would they build one diesel option engine for only a year or 2 years, or not a year and a half? Because the new Jeep only came in the middle of the year, and I've seen options for the 4-cylinder, but not options for a V6 diesel. And if you go to that build sheet we did a while ago, we talked about the Gladiator, and they had the build sheet up for it. It doesn't give you an option of the V6 diesel.
Well, if they put a different diesel in there, I would be extremely shocked because they've already got a lot of miles with that engine in the Mopar family over in the Ram trucks. So I just don't think it's going to be anything but the EcoDiesel V6.
I thought that too, but why it looks like there is going to be 2 different options, and they haven't seemed to clarify it, because that's what I'm seeing. For the regular Jeep, you have a 4-cylinder diesel, but then for the Gladiator, they're offering a V6
Weird.
diesel. So it's really weird. I'm getting confused here.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that Jeep has announced that the Sport and the Sport S is going to start out at $38,000. We'll just call it $38,000. The Overland model, we'll call it $42,000, and the Rubicon at $45,000. And then if you spec'd it all the way out, you could spend close to $60,000. I don't know how many people are going to go for those Jeep in-house aftermarket stuff, or if they're just going to roll it over to some other manufacturer and give it their aftermarket treatment right away. But, if you wanted to have all that warranty stuff built into it and get exactly what you wanted from the factory, expect to spend less than $60,000 for it.
I'd say over $60,000 by the time you get everything done. Dealer markup, shipping and handling charges, if that's what I call them. Yeah. Plates and license and fees, all that. I think you're going to be closer to 66. That will be my guess. Fully spec'd out.
Well, I'm looking at the actual press release, the FCA press release, and it does say a 3-liter eco diesel engine will be available starting in 2020. Rated at 260 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque with ESS standard. Yep. An 8-speed automatic transmission is standard and designed to handle the increased torque output.
Yep, so it's basically the same powertrain that's in my EcoDiesel with probably, like I said, it's going to have a little different tune to it, but that's what it is.
No, they're offering a 6-speed manual too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know how many people are going to buy that. As we've discussed, the manuals are a dying bunch. But let's go ahead and transition over here to some feedback that we got. This one is from the Instagrams from 45ACP Joe. He says, "Hey, Dan," and I'm sure he did not intend to forget you guys. He says, "I'm a big fan of the podcast. I plan on calling in with the same question so I can hear everybody's opinion, but wanted to start here. To start off, I found overlanding several years ago while looking for off-road videos on YouTube, and I've been hooked since. I want to get into off-roading and overlanding, but some of the vehicles are just too pricey, as we were just talking about. So after some research and seeing the capabilities, I bought a 2016 Subaru Outback. I'm currently building and outfitting it to be an all-around capable rig. The problem is there seems to be a lot of flack from true 4x4 drivers, and they look down a bit on the all-wheel drive vehicles. I understand that I'll never be a rock crawler, but after all the mods, I'll have 11 inches of ground clearance. So I guess my main question is, how do you and the rest of the guys on the podcast feel about something like a Subaru for overlanding? Would you ever trail ride with Subarus? I know there is a large community for Subarus, but I'm wondering if they are if they will ever be accepted as a capable overlanding rig. So, Rich, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on the Subaru, so I'll let you start off.
As far as an overlanding platform, they're awesome. They really are. So yeah, people give Subarus flack. Yeah, that's just the way it is. But then again, Ford guys give Dodge guys flack. Chevy guys give everybody else flack. Giving other rigs flack is just part of the territory. You just kind of shrug it off. You go with it. You just be happy you're getting better gas mileage than they are.
Yeah, laugh your way all the way past the pump.
Yeah. But no, there's so many options for Subarus out there. There's, just a few websites. There's Primitive Racing, LP Adventure, Rally Tech, Anderson Design and Fab. They all make awesome parts and lifts and skid plates and all kinds of accessories for Subarus. So no, you can make your Subaru incredibly capable, and it's designed to do what you want it to do. It's not going to be a rock crawler. My Ram Rebel is not a rock crawler, but it does what I want it to do. So, the whole goal is know what it is you want your vehicle to do, and that's what you build it for. So,
for sure. And I know for a fact I've seen some Subarus do some really creative stuff in terms of how to set things up and maximize the space that's available there. And I think if you really, in terms of 45 ACP Joe, if you challenge yourself and try and put that in that Subaru in some actual more difficult off-roading situations, you're going to figure out where its weak spots are, and you're going to be a better driver for it because you'll know the limits and how to finesse it through some of those obstacles.
Just make sure you videotape it when you do it.
Yeah, even if you don't, I know all that stuff becomes social media fodder, and then the trolls are going to come out and say, "Oh, you had no business being on that trail." So, video at your own discretion, or share at your own discretion, anyways. But I think you're going to be just fine going anywhere you want to with that soft rotor, and 11 inches of ground clearance is nothing to sneeze at.
It ain't no joke.
Yeah, most vehicles are coming in around the 8 inches under the diff, and since the Subaru is built differently with that independent front suspension there, and I suspect independent rear suspension, there's a lot that you're going to gain just by doing that. So I know there's lots of overlanders that are running Subarus to the end of the world and back with nothing but smiles on their faces and great stories to tell. So if somebody is looking down on you for overlanding in a Subaru, they're probably an idiot, and you don't need that negativity in your life anyways.
I totally agree. I would just tell them to stuff it. This is my vehicle. I'm going to do what I want to do with my vehicle.
Yeah. Tell them you'll see him at the next gas station. Oh wait, no, you won't, because you'll be able to keep going.
It's your vehicle. You're gonna build your vehicle your way. You want to be different. Everybody wants to be different. Even Jeep guys want to be different. Yeah, it's the Jeep, but we all build our Jeeps different. So you decided a Subaru. You're building your Subaru different than any other Subaru. Yeah. I wouldn't look down on you. I would applaud you for getting out and exploring your world.
Exactly. So you probably saw that answer coming from us anyways, but there it is. All right, next piece of feedback. This is from the email, and if anybody else wants to send us an email, just send it to the 4x4 podcast at yahoo.com. And this one I've kind of edited a little bit because it was fairly lengthy, or maybe spliced it together with a follow-up email. So bear with me. Hello to everyone involved in the 4x4 podcast. I've been binge listening to your show now for 2 weeks, and I have them all nearly finished. Whew. Another guy needs a badge of honor. I enjoy every minute of it. You cover automotive news, tools, gears, tips for your off-roading, tips for camping, and you speak to people that make awesome products and to the people that help others interact with camping and four-wheel drive. One episode that sticks out is episode 128, Trail Therapy. What your guest talked about was all around inspirational. That was a good one. I like that one. He first talked about how he had a trail-rated Jeep Patriot. There we go. Just like we were talking about. wheel whatever you want and make the most of it. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Jeep Patriot that was lifted 2 inches, and he just simply drove the vehicle. No large 44-inch tires, lockers, or winch, just a vehicle and the will to drive into the wilds. That to me is really awesome. Knowing how to drive is more important than what you drive. Later in the episode, he was talking about helping veterans get out and rejoin the civilian world and help them physically and mentally. He even went on to say that he would allow a veteran that did not have a vehicle to drive his own Jeep JK out on the trail while he stayed behind at camp. He is truly someone that wishes and wants to help. Other episodes I enjoy are the ones that you have a guest on with either works or owns a product company, such as episode 130 with Tread Right. Never had even heard of this company, and now I have my father-in-law buying Tread Right tires for his Dodge Ram because of the information that I heard on the podcast. That's really awesome. Glad we're giving sound advice there. I could continue to go on about which episodes I liked and what I have taken away from each episode, but that is the whole point, isn't it? To take away something from each and every episode. I have learned about new products from your podcast as well as inspiration to build a better four-wheeler, but most of all, just to enjoy what you have. You don't need to have the best of everything to go camping or four-wheeling. If you have a geo-tracker in stock form and go out for a weekend with a cooler, tent, and sleeping bag and just have an absolute blast. I've always been a simplistic man, simple things in life. I will tell you how simple. Currently looking for a pre-95 Jeep XJ. Why? Because before 95, there were no airbags in the XJs. I would also like to find in this XJ a manual transmission, manual door locks, crank windows, and a broken AC unit so I can remove it to make the Jeep lighter. Okay, the last one would be nice to have. I get that. Mine has AC and it doesn't work. And I'm in the Mojave. Take that. What I'm getting is that your podcast is awesome. It is an average Joe podcast, and that's why I suggest it to anybody that will listen to me. So far, I have 5 friends that are now listeners of your show. So keep up the good work and don't stop. Jason in Beaver Falls, PA. So Jason, thank you very much for that. Very inspirational email for us. Puts a little fuel in our tanks to keep the podcast going.
Those were appreciated.
Yeah. So now on to the follow-up email, where we've got a couple things that we're going to talk about. And actually, there was a bunch of them. I just whittled it down to the ones that we can talk about on this particular episode. Let's see. One of the things we'll talk about in the future is tire pressure. I have that in my notes here. So, making your vehicle better with an engine swap. This is everyone's dream, I think. And this is Jason's words, by the way. If you plan on keeping your vehicle and want dependability, should you swap parts for better, longer lasting ones? We do it with suspension components, brakes, and even spark plugs. But what about engines and transmissions and transfer cases? I have a 94 XJ. Had a 94 XJ once, and I wish I had it again, but I always said if the engine dies, I am swapping it to a GM 5.3 liter. The 4.0 just never died and went on to see over 200,000 miles, and then, well, you know what, it does say 200,000 K. I believe it's miles, though. And then more after selling it. The XJ is still on the road to this day. You need to weigh long-term goals, money options, and if you're going to get tired and outgrow that vehicle. If you could find a few people, interview them, and get their perspective on engine swaps, and if they would do it again, how did their vehicle perform after the swap, what else needed to be changed, and change that they did not predict for the swap that blindsided them. Okay, so the question really is, what do we think about drivetrain swaps to make a vehicle better? So, I have some experience with that, but most of my swaps have been to a newer working version of the same thing in terms of engine, transfer case, and transmission. So,
well, that's not an upgrade. That's
just a replacement.
That's just replacement.
But
how about you, Rich?
If I'm going to replace an engine, chances are I'm just going to replace an engine with the same displacement that I've got. It's going to be the same motor. You know?
Just a working version of it.
Right. I don't know. I'm not mechanically inclined enough to want to do an engine and transmission swap and then have to do what it takes to maintain all that and get all your components working together later on. I'd rather just stick with the stock stuff and make it dependable, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I think it really depends on the goal for that particular vehicle, because if you're swapping it into a daily driver, you just want something that's going to be quickly replaced and back on the road as soon as possible and is still reliable. If you're going to be overlanding, kind of the same thing. You want something that there's no trying to figure out, like what I've got now, the Frankenstein Jeep, where if I go to get brakes, I need to think about which model, make and model did the front axle come out of, make and model for the rear axle. All the suspension bits are completely, non-OEM at this point, so it does make it a little more challenging to get. Like I mentioned before, I waited for those kind of upgrades until I got down here to Southern California and had more access to getting some of those more unique parts, whereas in Alaska, just not an option. It just wouldn't have worked. So I know there's a lot of good engine options out there. I've looked and said before that, hey, whenever this 4-liter engine dies in my Jeep, that I'm going to get the Cummins R2.8. But every time, just the other day, I had my wife and 3 kids and the dog in the back of my Jeep, and it was miserable. Like, this family is just too big for that Jeep Cherokee. So maybe the Cummins swap is not an option, because I may at some point outgrow the Jeep. I don't know.
That's my problem, is I don't keep vehicles long enough to really even worry about it.
Okay, I do have a little experience with an engine swap. I helped a friend. His wife has a LJ, or no, a JK. She has a JK. She blew the motor in it. So, of course, her husband is he collects motors, cars, all this stuff. So he ended up with a Chrysler 300 that was totaled. He pulled the motor and tranny out of it. He was going to put that motor and tranny in her Jeep. Come to find out that the conversion kit that you need to put in the Jeep was close to $6,000.
Ooh.
So he said it was between $6,000 and $8,000 for the conversion kit. Everything he needed to do to put that motor in with the tranny and a transfer case, that was out without the transfer case. I'm sorry, I was just putting the motor and tranny in there.
Oof.
And then he still had to get the transfer case. So you have to look at all that stuff before you decide, oh, yeah, it'd be cool to have a V8. We all thought it would be a cool LJ with a Hemi in it, Yeah. But then when it came down to it, it was like, even with a kind of junkyard motor, because he got the car from a salvage because it was totaled, but the engine was fine. So he could use the computer, he can use the engine, he can use the transmission, but still, he's got to get the transmission from a Jeep Cherokee and a transfer case from a Jeep Cherokee to be able to modify it to put it in the JK. It's a lot. It's very complicated. Yeah. And if you're, so right now the motor is sitting on the floor of my friend's garage with the transmission still hooked to it, with the computer laying on top of it. And his wife has a brand new 6-cylinder engine in her Jeep. Yeah, because it was cheaper to buy a new motor, a brand new V6 motor for her Jeep that would fit right in than it would cost to do an engine swap.
Yeah, so
it's a coolness thing.
Here's one person I know just to illustrate that point. Adam, who is Overland _history on Instagram. He joined us over on the Overland Roundtable, and whenever he finishes his project, I'm going to have him here on the 4x4 podcast to talk about it. But he has a Jeep Cherokee that he blew up the 4-liter, and he decided to put in a Mercedes-Benz diesel engine into it. And he started this project over a year ago, and he is almost to the point where it's ready to get installed for the final time. It was all kinds of things. It's a heavier motor. There was clearance problems for the oil pan, getting all the motor mounts, getting it to line up and the adapters to mount up to the transmission, just one thing after another. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I think Adam will be okay in terms of cost. The engine swap will be probably about the same as it would have cost to just get a new crate 4-liter brand new engine and drop it in there, but he'll have the uniqueness of it, and he's already got a pretty well built in terms of suspension and Overland setup there. But in the meantime, he bought a whole new Jeep and has been driving that around. So there's a lot to go into it. But, there's a lot of more common swaps, like that 5.3 liter that you mentioned there. That's a pretty common one. There's a lot of V8 Jeeps running around there, and they all look very fun to drive. But again, you're going to run into the problem of just getting all the right bits and pieces to go back in it. And any engine swap into that XJ is probably going to cost as much as the XJ. Just my thoughts. But anything else on engine swaps we want to talk about for now?
No, I just say
think long and hard before you go in it.
It's cooler. The idea is cooler than the actual.
Yeah, but when it's
actually
done,
doing it.
V8 Cherokee, come on.
Oh yeah, it sounds great. But then once you get behind the wheel, you got to remember you got to change the front suspension. You got to change. It's a lot more complicated, and if you need to change engines, I just say I would just go with a regular swap, unless I don't plan on driving the truck for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a project, then go for it. Do something cool that's worth talking about.
If it's your second or third vehicle, yeah, I'd say go for it. But if it's gonna be your daily driver, that might not be such a good idea.
Yep.
And I have a big aversion to putting a Chevy motor in a Jeep.
Oh no, V8 everything. That's really, you can't go wrong.
No,
okay,
you cannot put a Chevy motor in a Jeep. It's just wrong.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's wrong.
Everybody disregard what Craig said just there. We will edit that one out. For gear review, so I got contacted by a company called Blackfire. Never heard of them before, but they had some really cool stuff, and they sent me some things to try out, and I'm going to give them a lot more testing here in the future. But everybody, I recommend you go check this out at blackfire.com, and I'll have a link to their Instagram at BlackfireIgnite, their page there. So what all came here, there is a multi-tool knife, and this thing is super heavy duty. I've used, a variety of Gerbers and Leathermans and everything, and a bunch of other off-brand ones. But this knife, by far, is heftier than any of the other ones. And so I'm looking forward to, I'm going to put that one into the regular duty use and see how it holds up to, my kind of use on a knife there. And there was also a Bluetooth speaker that has a magnet on the back, so you can stick it to anything metal and try it out there. I haven't used that one as much as I plan to yet, but kind of initial impressions, it's nice to have that magnet because you can put it up somewhere out of the way and it's not going to get, kicked around in the dirt. It's a hard comparison because my wife's got one of those Bose Bluetooth speakers, and Bose has outstanding audio quality. But I do a lot of listening with podcasts, and the Blackfire Bluetooth speaker kind of lacks the bass end of the sound spectrum there, and the EQ, which turns out works pretty well for podcasts. Helps the voice tone cut through pretty well. So that one's pretty good. Now, here's the really exciting things, all the different flashlights that they have. And if you go to...
I like their camp light.
Yeah, if you go to blackfire.com, they've got an option there. You can check out all the different lights. And so they've got the light part of it kind of swivels and rotates, and it's got a clamp that you can clamp onto various things to get the light kind of oriented to exactly what you're looking at. One of them, the one I think, Craig, you're probably talking about is the camp light there. $30.
Yeah, the one.
Yep. And it's one really bright LED. It's 300 lumens with the IPX7, so it's pretty good for waterproof rating. And then there's also a smaller version that essentially does the same thing, but it is a smaller LED. Runs on a different kind of battery. And then, what I found to be helpful as well is the cap-mounted LED. Because you ever been wearing a baseball type of hat, and you put on a headlamp, and then the brim of the hat kind of blocks where the light's going, or you got to flip the hat around backwards, or not wear the hat and then get mosquito bites all over the top of your head. But the cap-mounted one, it's got a clip on the bottom of it, so it clips to the top of your baseball hat. And it's got 3 LED lights, and thing is awesome. I don't know why somebody hasn't really been capitalizing on that idea before.
Actually, I've bought a couple of different ones off of Amazon.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested on how you feel about that one. But some of the other ones I've had, they're okay. The only problem is they're whichever way you have the cap pointed. So if you wear your cap a little bit farther back in your head, the light goes up. If you let a little bit, and some of them aren't adjustable. So if they made one a little bit adjustable, so if you have the cap up a little bit, because you might walk with your head up higher or lower or something. So you need to adjust it down so you can see your damn feet when you're walking in the dark.
I've had a couple of cheaper versions of those, and I was never really happy with them. But I'm betting that the LEDs on these are quite a bit better quality.
And it's a flood pattern, so you really get a nice widespread. I've used it a couple times. Walking the dog, checking the mail, looking for stuff just outside in the backyard where I don't have any lights, and you don't get the hot spots where it's super bright in some spots and then kind of dark in the others. So it's got a really good pattern to it. I like that one. 100 lumens, and it's got 2 brightnesses and then a flash, which my kids absolutely love when I turn that on and look at them in the face. I don't know what the flash is really good for aside from annoying your kids, but for that one job, it's really good.
Well, you think about the strobe as, let's say if you're out hunting and you're lost and you know that they're hunting for you by aircraft, that you point it up, use that. So
that's a pretty limited case, though. I don't find myself being lost while out hunting very often. I do find myself out hunting and not hunting in the dark, but
well, you never know when darkness comes.
That's true. Maybe I'm the guy that falls and breaks my leg and I'm out by myself making bad decisions. That could be. But anyways, that's worth checking out, and I'll have more on that later. But in the meantime, check them out, blackfire.com. They got a lot of cool stuff there. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about what's in the garage. And Craig, what do you got? You didn't fill anything in there. What have you all been up to lately?
I'm holding back. Still working on the transmission. Now I'm cleaning up the garage a little bit so I can get back to work on the transmission. It's apart. I am putting all the new pieces on it so I can put it back together. But I am on the hunt for a new bracket.
Is this like the transmission cross member or something else?
There's the cross member that goes under the Jeep. Is like the skid plate, but there's a bracket that goes from there up to the transmission and the transfer case, and it's got like a 3-inch crack on it, and it's literally holding on by a finger. And I'm like, I don't know how this thing didn't break in the first place, and it's been broken for a while, and I just never realized it. So I'm on the hunt for that. The only problem is the place I would get it is up in Sacramento. There's a Jeep wrecker up here in Sacramento. They have every type of Jeep. And it's an old auto wrecker, but all they do is Jeep. Everything Jeep. I actually have gone up there and got some Jeep parts for my Jeep. up there. And so one day I take that bracket and one other thing I'm looking for because I need to run all the way up there, and they just happen to be closed.
Oh, no.
Weekend.
Well, you got to let your fingers do your walking. Give them a phone call and just have them set it aside.
Yeah, but, I got that advice a couple of times after I spent, 20 minutes cussing out on Facebook. But it was just one of those things where they're always open on the weekend. They're open.
Except for when you need to get there.
And it's just the very first time I've ever gone up there, and they were closed. Yeah. And the weird thing was they were closed for a 4x4 event that they were going to. And I'm like, okay, son of a, because it takes, it takes me about an hour and 45 minutes to get there.
Well, you got to get that Jeep up and running soon. Seriously.
Yeah, it's really, really driving me nuts.
Well, I haven't had a whole lot going on, like I mentioned at the top of the show. It was more like a go visit grandma type of trip this long weekend instead of going out and doing some camping and off-roading. But last weekend, we did have a chance to sit down and record an episode of the Overland Roundtable. We have not mentioned that podcast for quite some time, but if you go over to overlandroundtable.com, you'll find, I think, 12 episodes in 5 years of overlanding stuff. Maybe I'll repackage that episode and publish it over here for the 4x4 podcast audience. If that's something that somebody's interested in, maybe we'll send some more listeners over there. But that's really been it. Doing some trip planning with I know my schedule here for the next year and a half, and so I'm trying to fill in the calendar with what trips I have and where all I can go off-roading. And that's really about all that I've been up to. So, Rich, what all you got going on?
Still trying to finalize plans for this topper.
Oh, man.
How many months has this been? Oh, my God. So, I don't know. I'm sticking it out. I'm gonna see this through. We're going to make this happen, but hopefully it happens soon, because there have been times where I've been like, all right, I'm just going to email them and say, all right, I'm done. I'm going to go with this one.
Yeah.
But
well, there's probably, it's a common vehicle, the Ram Rebel. There's probably a bunch of places where you could just go in and give them your pile of money and they could install it right that same day.
Well, there is, but I mean, we're working out a promotional deal where they'll be able to use my vehicle for, future advertisements and stuff like that. So that's really what drags everything out, but we'll see. Other than that, my wife and I were talking about, you mentioned the Overland Roundtable, what kind of trips we would be doing and stuff. And I think on that, I mentioned we're going to stick close to home this year, but, actually I think we're looking at Baja or, Lake Tahoe.
Is there a Baja, Kansas that I don't know about?
I was wait. Close by home. He has a different. Yeah. You think he has a different version of close to home?
It is at least part of North America. Does that count as close to home?
That counts. It's in the same hemisphere.
Yeah.
Okay, so farther away would be Australia.
Well,
okay, I get it. Okay.
We're going to have to talk
We're
then.
Staying close to home, USA.
Yeah.
Turns out we know a guy about Baja, so we may be able to.
Yes, we do.
If we can work schedules out, then maybe we could actually go record a live show somewhere down in Baja together.
That would be cool.
So, awesome. Well, we'll just send me some dates here, and we'll talk to Matt over at camp4low.com, and we'll figure something out.
You could go explore Death Valley,
Yeah,
that's true too. Yeah,
I think there's more adventure appeal to Baja, though. Not gonna lie. Well, that's gonna be cool. All right. Well, I think it's time to wrap this show up. So, lastly, this show is brought to you by other listeners like you. You can support the 4x4 podcast by shopping over on Amazon, just like you normally would. They've got everything under the sun. Just before you do, hit the link, the4x4podcast.com/Amazon, and we'll get a few cents from that purchase. You'll still pay the exact same low price that you normally would pay. We'll just be getting a few cents to help keep this podcast running. And also, we are a part of the 4x4 Radio Network. Go to 4x4radio.com, and you'll find a playlist with all of the shows that are on the 4x4 Radio Network. Just hit play, and you can listen to the Center Steer podcast and learn about everything Land Rovers, or the Jeep Talk Show and talking all things Jeep with Tony and Josh and Tammy there. And we've got On the Trail podcast with Kevin and Scott, and also the Trail Chasers podcast. And you can reach us at the 4x4 podcast at yahoo.com. We're on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and the Twitters at the 4x4 podcast at all of those places. And we do want to hear your voice in our voicemail. So 719-924-5337. You can call that number any time of the day, whether you're sober or not. And leave us a message that we'll be able to respond to and make fun of you if you're not sober. Or you can hit the speak pipe tool over on our website there on the show notes for this episode 144. The show notes are at the 4x4podcast.com/144. And we've mentioned it before. If you want to share just this specific podcast episode, you can send the link, the 4x4podcast.com/144mp3 to any of your friends. Put it on your own Facebook page, and that'll take somebody directly to the podcast file. It skips through all of the annoying business about subscribing, but you can do that as well through any of the podcasting services that are out there, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or iHeartRadio, or pick your favorite service. We'll be there. And if we're not, send us an email, and we'll fix that. But I think we've got just about all the services covered. So with that is it. So tread lightly, God bless, and be safe out there while exploring your world.